"Don't board that plane. There's a device on it." A young girl's voice rang out across the scorching Texas airport. No one knew who she was. No ID badge. No apparent reason to be trusted. Just trembling eyes. And a hauntingly genuine sense of desperation. 15 minutes later, a sabotage device was found beneath the tail wing of a $75 million aircraft. And the man that girl had just saved was the CEO of the largest aviation conglomerate in the southern United States. But that was only the beginning, because behind that scream, there was a conspiracy, a cover-up, and the mysterious death of her father, a gifted pilot who died 5 years ago for daring to speak the truth no one wanted to hear. This is not a story about airplanes. This is the journey of a 13-year-old girl, fighting against an entire system to reclaim the truth her father sacrificed everything to protect. Texas. Midday in June, the heat sizzled off the runway like fire. Waves of heat distorted the shapes in the distance. A sleek silver Gulfstream G800 jet waited silently for clearance. Its engines growled like caged beasts. The cabin door had closed. The crew had finished their checks. Everything awaited just one signal. Then a voice pierced the sunlit silence like glass shattering under a bullet. "Stop the takeoff. There's a device under the tail." The scream wasn't from airport speakers, not from the flight crew, not any official personnel. It came from a young girl, petite frame, messy curls, a faded blue dress, sneakers caked with red dirt. She burst from the grassy edge of the runway like she was fleeing from something more terrifying than death itself. She screamed again. "Now! Stop that plane!" 3 airport security guards reacted instantly. Hands went to radios, eyes locked onto the girl as if she were an intruder. One ran to the control vehicle, another toward the tower, and the third dashed toward the girl. But they were all too slow for the rhythm of her racing heart. That girl's name was Emma Carter, 13 years old, no badge, no guardian. Only one unexplainable certainty that something was about to explode beneath that aircraft's tail. The scene left everyone stunned. At the top of the boarding stairs, a man in a gray suit stood motionless, his face older than his appearance. Silver hair, dark glasses, hands gently resting on the steel railing. That was Richard Sterling, a titan in U.S. civil aviation. Billionaire, inventor, and owner of Sterling Avionics, a globally renowned aircraft navigation systems company. And he was the one about to board that plane. Sterling squinted in the sun's glare, shading his eyes to locate the source of the scream. He couldn't make out the words clearly, but he saw the desperation in the girl's eyes as she was dragged from the runway. Emma didn't resist. She didn't cry. She simply raised her hand, trembling, and shouted with all her soul, "Please check the auxiliary rudder panel. Please, something's not right there." Somehow, her words struck something deeply human in Richard Sterling. Not reason, not the instinct of a CEO, but a primal gut feeling. The same instinct he'd trusted in every critical decision. A rare sense that only comes once in a lifetime. He turned to the head of security and signaled to delay takeoff. "Check the underside of the tail," he ordered. "Immediately." "But sir, she's probably just a kid playing a prank." The guard hesitated. Sterling didn't repeat himself. His stare alone made it clear this was not up for debate. 2 technicians rushed to the area the girl had pointed to. One crouched down, shining a light along the rudder's lower panel. A few seconds later, he shot upright, face pale as chalk. "There's something here," he shouted into his radio. A foreign device. Red light flashing. The wind still blew softly, but time froze in that moment. In less than 5 minutes, an unknown girl had saved the life of one of America's most influential men. Sterling descended the aircraft stairs slowly. Each step pushed back waves of shock and fear hanging over the crowd. He approached Emma, still restrained by a security officer, but staring at him without recognition. There was no fear in her eyes. Only one thing: truth. "What's your name?" he asked, voice low and steady. "Emma Carter," she replied, gripping the hem of her dress tightly. Sterling studied her for a long moment, then repeated the name as if carving it into memory. Emma Carter. He didn't yet know that this small name would lead him into the darkest investigation of his life. A girl who saved his life and pulled him into the long-forgotten tragedy of her own. A story that, once illuminated, would shake not just the aviation industry, but challenge the very foundations of integrity, reputation, and justice in a world desperate to silence the truth. Emma Carter, The name echoed in Richard Sterling's mind like a code he hadn't yet deciphered. He couldn't recall ever hearing it before. But in the girl's eyes there was something that made it impossible to walk away, as if nothing had happened. Not just because she had saved his life, but because her gaze held a kind of memory only those who've lost too much too soon ever carry. Emma stood trembling, face smudged, shoes muddy, voice still fractured from the scream. But she didn't cry. She simply clenched her fists, as if holding on to something that could no longer be allowed to break. Airport police had arrived. Security personnel gathered around. But Sterling signaled them to halt. He didn't want this girl treated as a troublemaker. He wanted to know, how did she know? How did you spot that? He asked gently, as if speaking to his own granddaughter. Emma glanced at him, eyes still confused but firm. I overheard something strange on the aviation radio. Yesterday. Static interference, breaking into the maintenance channel. They were talking about a system failure simulation device. I thought it was odd, so I came to the airport early this morning. And you wandered into a restricted zone? An officer interjected, clearly irritated. Emma lowered her head. I didn't mean to cause trouble, but I saw the tail wasn't properly secured. I recognized it from the panel shape. It didn't fit. My dad used to teach me those things. Sterling frowned. Your dad? She nodded. He was a pilot, a systems engineer. His name was Thomas Carter. He died 5 years ago in a plane crash. A heavy silence fell under the blazing sun. Sterling tilted his head. That name, Thomas Carter. It floated through his memory like smoke, familiar but unreachable. I'm sorry for your loss, he said softly. Emma nodded, but her eyes had changed. No longer afraid now, determined. As if this wasn't the first time she had to prove to adults that she wasn't crazy. They said my dad died because of structural failure. The plane lost control. But I never believed that. Sterling paused. He had read hundreds of crash reports. But a child doubting the official cause of her father's death and storming into an airport to save a stranger? That wasn't instinct. That was conviction. A flame lit by something real, no matter how deeply buried. He glanced at Davis, head of security, now receiving updates from the technical team. What's the device? Sterling asked. Not part of internal systems, Davis replied. Unidentified connection, signal emitter. If it hadn't been removed before flight, the consequences would have been severe. And this girl spotted it with the naked eye? Yes, sir. Sterling fell silent. Again, he looked at Emma, now seated on a metal bench in a temporary waiting room. She didn't seek validation, didn't hope for praise. She just sat there, clutching her backpack, eyes fixed on the horizon like she was chasing some lingering trace of her father. He suddenly thought of his granddaughter, Lily, the same age as Emma. But Lily only cared about skateboards, Instagram, and TikTok. This girl was sitting at the heart of a sabotage plot, like an invisible nucleus caught in a raging storm. Sterling sighed. Let her go home, he said, and keep in touch. You're ignoring the trespassing violation? The officer raised an eyebrow. I nearly died on my own plane from a device she warned us about, Sterling replied, voice cold as steel. I'm not pressing charges against the person who saved my life over an access badge. Then he walked away, but not to board the plane. He returned to his office where the ghost of Thomas Carter suddenly stirred from the shadows of memory. Meanwhile, in a small house on Oak Ridge Street, Gloria Carter was making hot tea when the front door burst open. Emma walked in. She said nothing, dropped her backpack on a chair. Her hands still shook. What happened? Gloria asked. Emma whispered, I did what Dad would have done. Gloria looked at her granddaughter, then slowly sat down. Her face wrinkled, but her eyes still sharp. Your father would be proud, but remember what he knew. Might have been what killed him. Emma nodded, then said quietly like a vow, Then I'll find out what that was, even if it takes my whole life. That night, the quiet suburban neighborhood in Amarillo was enveloped in a special kind of silence, the kind only found in old houses, where neighbors still remembered each other by blooming seasons and the familiar bark of dogs. At house number 17 on Oak Ridge Street, the kitchen lights still glowed a soft amber, though the clock on the wall ticked close to 9 p.m. The smell of cornbread and peppermint tea lingered in the air, a silent healing ritual Gloria Carter performed every time her granddaughter came home with a thoughtful look in her eyes. Emma sat by the window, clutching her mug of tea like she was trying to hold on to its warmth. Her backpack remained unopened beneath her feet. She didn't say much, only murmured, "I saved someone today. Someone important." Then fell silent. Gloria didn't pry. Emma had never been the kind of child you could force answers from. She was like her father Thomas, quiet, perceptive, and only spoke when truly necessary. Then a knock at the door. Not too loud, not rushed, just enough to make Gloria glance up, her hand instinctively sliding toward the old baseball bat she kept by the pantry. "Did you lock the door?" she asked. Emma nodded. Gloria walked to the front. She moved the small curtain aside and froze. Standing on the porch was a tall man, upright posture, not too young, but far from frail. Silver hair neatly trimmed, a crisp white shirt buttoned up, holding a soft leather briefcase. No bodyguards, no escort, but the porch light revealed his face clearly. "Oh, Lord," Gloria whispered. "That's Richard Sterling." She cracked the door open. "What do you want?" Sterling nodded politely. "I hope I'm not disturbing you. I only need a few minutes." "You're the one my granddaughter mentioned? And your granddaughter," he said gently, "may have saved my life this morning." From the hallway, Emma peeked out, eyes wide. She hadn't expected him to come. Not tonight. Not alone. Gloria hesitated, then opened the door. "Come in, but I'm not making more tea." In the modest living room, Sterling sat on the edge of the sofa, as if he didn't want to take up more space than needed. His eyes scanned the room. Old books, family photos, scuff marks on the wooden floor, signs of a simple life, full of memories. Emma sat opposite him, hugging a pillow, eyes fixed on the man she had saved with just a scream. "You really heard that conversation on the radio?" Sterling began, as if seeking final confirmation. Emma nodded. "Frequency 118.65. There was static. I heard strange voices. Someone mentioned a remote start protocol and hydraulic fault simulation. They thought no one was listening. But I monitor those channels ever since my dad passed." Sterling raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because I wanted to understand what really happened to him. The report said structural failure. But I remember the last time he came home, he was worried. He said something was wrong with the navigation system. He sent a warning email, but no one paid attention." Sterling leaned back. "Your dad's name was Thomas Carter?" Emma nodded. Gloria remained silent, her hand resting on her granddaughter's chair as if always ready to shield her. "I met him once," Sterling said, as if brushing dust off a memory, "at an FAA conference nearly 6 years ago. He gave a presentation on signal delay in multi-satellite systems. Clear, sharp, insightful. I remember telling my assistant, this guy could change how we navigate aircraft forever." Emma said nothing, but her eyes shimmered with a strange light. The truth, even just a small piece, could bring someone back to life. "I didn't come here for publicity," Sterling continued. "I came to say thank you, and also to make a proposal." Gloria narrowed her eyes. "I'd like to sponsor a full scholarship for Emma to join the West Texas Young Aviation Academy. It includes basic flight training, systems engineering courses, and simulator instruction. At the same time, I want to reopen the case related to your father's crash." "Why?" Emma asked, her voice suddenly more mature than her age. "Because I believe his death and this morning's sabotage may be connected. And I need your help to understand what really happened." Gloria was about to object, but Emma's eyes stopped her. There was no innocence left there, only resolve. "What do you want from me?" Emma asked, hesitant. "You saw what I didn't, heard what others didn't. You have instinct. You have faith. And more than anything, you carry the memory of a man who dared to stand against a mistake. I can't think of anyone better suited to help me find the truth." Silence. Finally, Gloria said softly, "If she says yes, I won't stop her." Emma looked at Sterling for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll go," she said, "for my dad." 2 days later, Sterling's black SUV pulled up in front of a tech complex nestled in the barren western outskirts of Amarillo. A stainless steel sign read, "Sterling Avionics Institute, Research and Flight Systems Division." The gate was secured with biometric scanners and facial recognition cameras. Emma peered through the window silently. This place wasn't like the ones she had imagined. It didn't gleam like NASA, nor did it feel as dry as a mechanical plant. It felt more like a fortress of minds, housing thousands of untold stories. A place her father once walked. "Still want to go in?" Sterling asked, glancing at her through the rearview mirror. Emma nodded. "I have to." They passed 2 security checkpoints and arrived at a 3-story glass building shaped like a flight deck. Inside, the air was cool, sterile, faintly scented with ozone and new metal. Engineers in white coats moved silently between labs, a world running on logic and precision. On a large wall in the main lobby, framed photos were neatly arranged. Founders, test pilots, chief engineers. Emma scanned each name, each face, but her father's wasn't there. No name, no trace. "He worked here," she whispered mostly to herself. Sterling stood behind her. "I know, and that absence is exactly why we're here." He led her to the 2nd floor, to a room labeled with a faded metal sign, Flight Systems Archive. Inside, a tall, broad-shouldered man was organizing files. When Sterling entered, he looked up and smiled familiar, quiet. "Emma, this is Captain Tom Bradley. He trained your father during the Na'vi Mark V navigation system trials." Bradley extended his hand. "Pleasure to meet you. You've got your father's eyes focused, sharp, and a little stubborn." Emma shook his hand. "I just want to know what he really did here." Bradley nodded. "Then you've come to the right place." He pulled out a folder. The old pages crackled like dust as he turned them. Inside were internal reviews, technical drawings, and detailed descriptions of the Na'vi Mark V system, a technological breakthrough that, if successful, would allow aircraft to operate safely in GPS-denied zones like military areas, deserts, or dense jungles. "Your dad was the first to identify a critical flaw," Bradley explained. "The system sometimes showed incorrect altitude, especially during solar flares or magnetic storms." Emma frowned. "What does that mean? If altitude is misread, a pilot might think they're at 5,000 feet when they're just a few hundred feet above ground. And when they try to correct, everything can end in seconds," Sterling added. "Na'vi was expected to bring in hundreds of millions in defense contracts. Any delays would stall the entire project." Emma stared at the folder. "So they ignored his warnings?" Bradley was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "Not everyone, but most chose silence." She turned to Sterling. "Did you know what my dad warned about?" Sterling met her eyes. "I knew he was brilliant, but I wasn't directly involved with the tech team then. I was busy, keeping the company afloat after that year's financial crisis. I can't say I'm blameless, but I'm here now, because I won't hide anything anymore." Silence filled the room. Emma sat down, unzipped her backpack, and took out a USB her father had left behind, something she found in her grandmother's old safe box. "I think this might be the key." Bradley carefully inserted it into a secure laptop. The screen lit up. A series of folders appeared. Test logs, Nav-Vi warnings, crash simulations, audio notes, and in the corner one folder labeled, "For Emma." Her heart raced. Her hand trembled as she moved the cursor. Sterling placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to open it if you're not ready." Emma shook her head. "I have to. I've come too far to stop." Click. An audio file began to play, her father's voice, warm, familiar, but urgent. "If you're hearing this, Emma, I may not have made it home. Don't be afraid. Don't stay silent. They want to hide what I've seen. But if you trust your instinct like I taught you, you'll know what to do." Emma closed her eyes. A silent tear traced down her cheek. The room inside Sterling Avionics remained steeped in silence after the recording ended. Thomas Carter's voice still lingered through the speaker, not fearful, not bitter, but marked by a strange calmness of a man who already understood the price of speaking the truth. That voice was no longer just a memory. It was a flame. Emma sat still, hands resting on her lap, palms damp with sweat. It seemed like every thought inside her paused, making space for one undeniable realization. Her father had known he wouldn't make it, and he had prepared to say goodbye not with tears, but with truth. Bradley exhaled slowly, his gaze no longer that of a teacher, but of a man carrying guilt. He left that final message, not for anyone else, just for you. Sterling stared at the screen, then turned to Emma. "But there's more. These files, we have to go through them carefully. If they contain system error data, they might be the only untouched evidence left." "My dad didn't trust cloud storage," Emma said. eyes still fixed on the screen. He used to say, anything uploaded can be hacked. He preferred old-school methods, USBs, papers, handwritten letters. Sterling nodded. Honestly, that's how I used to live before technology started thinking for us. Bradley opened the remaining folders. Inside were system error logs, signal interference during solar storms, altitude discrepancies ranging from 100 to 600 feet, simulations altered before being included in official reports. Someone tampered with this, Bradley muttered, his voice dropping. They didn't just ignore Thomas's warnings. They erased the evidence he left behind, and he backed it all up before they could, Emma whispered, both comforted and heartbroken by the thought. She reached into her backpack and pulled out another old envelope, thick, brown, slightly torn at the edge, sealed with yellowed tape. The handwritten words in black ink read, "Confidential, for eyes only, Richard Sterling." Sterling accepted it, turning it over in his hands. It wasn't sealed tight, just secured with an aged strip of masking tape. I found it in a bank safety deposit box, Emma explained. My grandma held the key for 5 years. When my dad died, he told her, if anything happens, wait for the right moment, then open it. Sterling said nothing. He carefully opened the envelope and pulled out 3 items, a small leather notebook, a 2-page handwritten letter, and a second USB thicker than the first, heavier, bearing an old research department seal. Bradley whistled softly. Classic secure drive, can't be wiped remotely. Sterling opened the letter and began reading aloud, but his voice gradually slowed. Richard, if you're reading this, then I guess things turned out the way I feared. I know I'm likely being watched, but I can't stay silent. The system we're building has been compromised from the inside. Could be the CTO, maybe someone even higher. They're pushing this through to production knowing it has fatal flaws. I can't sign the final approval. I've refused. Emma looked up, her expression frozen. They asked him to stay silent, and when he refused, the crash happened. Sterling finished, folding the letter and placing it on the table like a crime scene exhibit. Bradley spoke quietly. Someone on the board gave the order. Someone with power beyond Thomas, possibly current CTO Gordon Blake. He always rushed the project forward. I've seen him pressure engineers to approve unfinished firmware updates. I've heard that name, Emma murmured. He was in the meeting when I came in. Tall, gray hair, eyes like stone. Gordon isn't just the CTO, Sterling said. He's got ties to military contracts. If Navi Mark V succeeded, he'd be next in line for CEO. Bradley shook his head.
And if it failed? Hundreds of lives, and they'd just call it a technical error.
The room suddenly felt colder, though the air conditioning hummed steadily. A chilling realization crept through every corner. This wasn't just a crash. It might have been a sophisticated murder disguised as equipment failure. Emma stood up. Her hand rested on the second USB. If anything's in here, it could expose everything. Sterling nodded. But if we open it, there's no going back. She looked him in the eye, no longer the gaze of a child. I haven't had a way back since the day they told me my dad had an accident. Bradley inserted the second USB into the secure computer, his hand slow but steady. Sterling stood beside him, arms folded, his expression as tense as a pulled wire. Emma moved closer, lips pressed tightly together. She wasn't sure what frightened her, more the possibility that her father had been murdered, or the realization that he had known it all along. On the screen appeared a list of encrypted folders, each labeled in cryptic technical abbreviations. Crash analysis, flight sim logs, internal comm recordings, and one simply titled Final Entry. Bradley moved the cursor over it and glanced at Emma. She nodded, unblinking. Click. A video file opened. Not an external view, but the cockpit interior. Date stamped. 5 years ago, the day Thomas Carter went down. At first, the image was grainy, then gradually sharpened. A soft blue light bathed the cabin. Her father's face appeared calm, focused. He had no idea this would be his last recording. System audio echoed steadily. Altitude, 0 feet. Heading 218. Navigation drift, increasing. Thomas tilted his head. Navigation says 5,000, but I'm scraping cumulus. He adjusted the yoke, eyes scanning the dials. Manual override engaged. He spoke into the radio. A click, then static, then a voice. Not Thomas, not from the system, not a technical alert. Execute before he files. Emma felt the air vanish from her lungs. Bradley froze. That's not a technical directive. Sterling's hands clenched behind his back. It's a command. The video ended, not with an explosion, but with absolute silence. The kind of silence left behind when no one survives to tell the story. Emma turned away, but didn't cry. She stood, walked toward the conference room window where the afternoon light stretched across the floor like a blade. He knew. He prepared. He recorded everything. And still, they were a step ahead. Not necessarily, Bradley said, his fingers still working the mouse. There's more files we haven't opened yet. The next file popped up. Satellite signal analysis maps, spatial interference data, black box data flow diagrams. Every piece was meticulously annotated by Thomas Carter, color-coded, charted, with notes on recurring anomalies. Sterling stared at the screen. They created a system that simulated mechanical failures, but was actually triggered remotely by false signals. And Thomas discovered the method before they could erase it, Bradley concluded. This isn't a theory anymore. This was a murder plan. Emma turned, her eyes blazing. Can we prove it? Not yet, Sterling said, voice heavier. We have hard evidence, analysis, video. But unless we know who gave the order, we're still fighting a shadow. Bradley kept scrolling through dozens of programming logs. Then a new directory appeared. Sim, Override, Gordon, Logs. The three of them exchanged looks. Inside were firmware code modifications for Navi Mark V, all tagged with the internal credentials of Gordon Blake, the current CTO, date and timestamps, internal IP addresses. Emma whispered. So it was him. Bradley nodded. Blake edited the firmware to include simulated error packages. If uploaded to a real aircraft, it could falsify altitude or navigation readings, tricking the pilot into thinking they were safe. And with just one remote trigger, Sterling added, it becomes the perfect accident. Emma took a step back, her hand trembling. My dad was right. He didn't die in an accident. He was taken because he refused to stay silent. No one responded. They didn't have to. Emma's words hung in the air like a formal accusation. Sterling approached the table, carefully placing all the documents back into the envelope. He turned to Bradley. We need to secure this data, now, and prepare for what comes next. Report to the FBI? Bradley asked. Not yet, Sterling replied. We don't know what Blake's still holding. If he senses we're digging up the past, he'll wipe out the rest. We need to move faster than him. Emma stepped beside them. Then what do we do first? Sterling looked at her, his eyes suddenly stern like an order. You learned to fly. Emma blinked. Fly? Yes. We have evidence. We have motive. But to face him in the open, you need standing. You need to be seen not as someone who survived, but as someone who inherits her father's legacy. Bradley smiled faintly. And you need to train with the best. Emma tilted here. Head. You? No, Bradley said. With a plane, near midnight, when everything inside house number 17 on Oak Ridge Street had fallen into silence. Only the ticking of the old wall clock echoed steadily. Emma remained seated at her desk. On her laptop, the files from her father's USB were unfolding line by line. Code, handwritten notes, schematics, distorted audio, simulations, a trove of information, and possibly a Pandora's box. Beside her, the brown leather notebook her father left behind lay half open. The final sentence on the handwritten page was an odd clue. It's not a system error, it's manipulation from the inside. If you're reading this, investigate the 4/9 meeting. Hangar D cameras were disabled. Emma marked the page, then looked up. Outside, the sky was pitch black. Wind rustled the curtains with the cold of a lonely Texas night. She was about to close her laptop when her phone lit up. A message from an unknown number. Come alone, Hangar D, Empot PM tomorrow. Don't tell Sterling, it matters. No signature, no threat. But a chill ran through her gut. Strangely, it wasn't fear. It was the instinctive tremor of a familiar challenge. She had lived in silence long enough to recognize when the truth comes looking for her. The next morning, Emma said nothing about the message. But in her eyes, Gloria knew something had shifted. "Don't go alone," she only said while pouring milk into the cereal. Emma didn't reply, but her grip on the spoon tightened. At 2:30 p.m., Captain Bradley's old gray pickup veered off the paved road, heading northwest toward the Sterling test zone. Inside the cabin, no one spoke for 10 minutes. The wind slipped through a cracked window, carrying the scent of dust and aviation fuel. Emma sat in the back seat, staring outside, clutching the USB she would bring. In her jacket pocket was a hidden lapel mic, a gift from FBI agent Dana Morales, whom Sterling had secretly contacted after decrypting the video data. "You're sure you want to go in alone?" Bradley asked, eyes fixed on the road. "I need to see his face," Emma replied. "If someone's bold enough to lure me to an abandoned hangar, they must think I'm weak. And if I don't show, I might never know who I'm really up against." Bradley stayed quiet. His grip on the wheel tightened like he was holding back something stronger than the wind. Hangar D came into view, a low, rusted metal shed sitting alone at the edge of the test field. No cameras, no guards. Tall weeds brushed Emma's legs as she stepped out and walked alone to the creaking metal doors. The USB in her hand felt cold as stone. She took a deep breath. The metal door groaned as she pushed it open. Inside darkness, silence. The scent of oil and rust hung heavy. 1 minute, 2, no sound. Then footsteps echoed, slow, as if the person wasn't rushed or afraid. From the shadows, a man stepped forward. Tall, slender, charcoal gray coat, salt and pepper hair slicked back, hands in his pockets. The slit of light from the door caught his eyes sharp as steel under surgical light. Emma recognized him instantly. "Gordon Blake, you really came," he said smoothly. "Wasn't sure you had the nerve. You knew my father," Emma said firmly, eyes locked on him. "I did," Blake replied, almost with pride. "Thomas Carter was brilliant. Shame, he was too honest." Emma's blood rushed to her face. "You killed him," Blake smirked. "Child, adults don't act like children. We make choices. Your father had a choice. He refused. And any system, technical or human, purges faulty elements." "And I'm a fault too?" Emma asked. "Not yet. But you're close," Blake said, slowly pulling out a small black device nearly identical to the sabotage item Emma had spotted under Sterling's plane. "They won't believe you," he continued. "A 13-year-old claiming to understand flight systems, going against a CTO honored by the Pentagon? You're just noise." Emma stepped back, then tightened her lips. "What if I'm not alone?" Blake narrowed his eyes. She reached to her collar and tapped it. A soft click. "Mike's live," she said. "FBI is listening, and they're on their way." Blake's eyes darkened, but no panic. He stepped back, gaze razor sharp. "You're just like him, but he had no one coming to save him." Just then, the hangar doors flew open, light flooding in. Morales was the first in, gun drawn, FBI coat flaring behind her. Bradley, right behind. "Hands where we can see them," Morales shouted. Blake didn't resist, raised his hands slowly, smiling. "Amateurs, we have recordings," Morales said. "Witnesses, the device. Enough to charge you with conspiracy to murder through sabotage of civil aviation." Blake glanced at Emma one last time. "Do you know the true puppet master never stands in the hangar?" "And that's what I'll find out," Emma replied. Gordon Blake was handcuffed on the spot at Hangar D. His only resistance was silence, not submissive, not fearful, but the kind of silence that carries the weight of someone still in control, even after being stripped of power. Morales and Bradley escorted Blake back to Sterling Avionics under tight security. Emma followed behind, her eyes fixed on him. She knew this arrest wasn't the end. It was only a shift in the game. In the interrogation room, a small, soundproof chamber with a metal table, 2 facing chairs, and a harsh white light overhead, Morales sat across from Sterling. Emma watched from the surveillance monitor outside, standing beside Bradley. "You are charged with intentionally tampering with aviation navigation software, resulting in death, deliberate destruction of technical evidence, and conspiracy to sabotage civil safety," Morales began, her voice calm but razor sharp. Blake leaned back, eyes on the ceiling. "Sounds dramatic. But do you really think I did all that alone?" Morales raised an eyebrow. "Then tell us who helped you." Blake chuckled softly, then spoke slowly. You think the government lets a child pull a USB stick and face no consequences? I'm not surprised you arrived so quickly, but I assure you, someone else got there faster. Sterling leaned forward, eyes lit with fire. What are you saying? Blake looked directly at him. I'm saying your backup systems were wiped this morning, and the only remaining data Thomas Carter ever left now lives in the hands of a little girl. Emma's breath caught in her throat. What does he mean? She asked, turning to Bradley. Bradley pulled out his phone, logging into Sterling's secure backup system. Error. Access denied. Backup node not found. Damn it, he muttered. The backup servers have been taken down. Sterling grabbed his phone, returning to the monitor. Who accessed the system this morning? An IT engineer quickly traced the access log. Only one ID was granted. Tier 1 clearance at 6:03 a.m. Ethan Monroe, systems analyst. Ethan Monroe, a quiet, forgettable new hire, always present in technical rooms, always keeping his distance, and always with a reason to remain invisible. Emma froze. He was the inside man, the contingency. Morales called the local FBI field unit to track Ethan immediately. The report came back. He's ditched his access card. Laptop and phone left behind. Personal vehicle is missing. He's likely fled. Emma stepped back, as if the ground had slipped beneath her. If all the data's been erased, then all we have left is... Bradley finished the sentence. The USB you're holding. Inside Sterling's executive office, an emergency meeting was underway within an hour. Present. Sterling, Morales, Bradley, Emma, and 2 internal legal counsels. Arresting Blake is just the first step, Sterling said, but the system is now like an engine without fuel. We can't press charges without the data. Morales spoke slowly. We need to go public, not just to secure the evidence, but to protect Emma. Whoever is behind this has access to insiders. They won't wait quietly. Emma looked up. So, we hold a press conference? Not a press conference, Sterling replied. An official disclosure with media, lawyers, witnesses, and the FBI. And Emma, you'll be the one leading it. She stared at him wide-eyed. I'm a kid. Who would believe me? Morales placed a hand on her shoulder. They won't believe you because of your age. They'll believe because you carry the voice of a man who can no longer speak. That evening, while Gloria stirred chicken soup in the kitchen, Emma sat in her room, staring at the USB. In her palm was an old photo of her father Thomas smiling, holding a small aviation flag from his first solo flight in a Cessna. A notification pinged on her laptop. USB mount successful. 2 new files recovered. Emma opened the first file. It wasn't technical. It was personal. Her father's voice again, but this time not professional, just a message. If you're reading this, it means everything has already happened. But I'm not afraid. Fear is when you're given a chance to act and do nothing. You're the only one I trust, Emma. Because you see what others overlook. Remember, truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be heard. At that exact moment, another anonymous message flashed on Emma's phone. Thought you'd stop after Blake. Looks like Thomas's daughter doesn't know when to quit. We'll be waiting at Hangar B this time. Alone won't be enough. Emma's hand went cold. Bradley entered the room, and one look at her face said it all. Something happened? She handed him the phone. They know I still have the data, and they want to end it before I can go public. Then we beat them to it, Bradley said, eyes narrowing. Emma clutched the USB tighter. This time, she said, we take the fight into the light. The morning sky over Amarillo was a dull gray, veiled in a layer of thin clouds like secrets still lurking inside Sterling Avionics' network system. No one spoke during the ride to headquarters. Emma sat in the back seat of Sterling's SUV, clutching the backpack with the USB inside. In her palm, the data felt less like a tool and more like the only living memory of her father. In the main lobby, everything looked business as usual. Engineers pacing between labs, screens glowing with live telemetry, the hum of a 3D printer in the aerodynamic model bay. But anyone paying attention could feel the air had changed, as if the whole building were holding its breath, waiting for a storm to break. Sterling brought Emma to the executive control room on the 3rd floor, the nerve center where all server access was monitored. Bradley and Agent Morales were already there. The door closed. The glow of the main monitor cast a pale blue light across their tense faces. Our system was hit at the core just before dawn, Morales began. From the inside, Tier 1 admin credentials. Every one of Thomas Carter's backup files was wiped, and the log history itself scrubbed. The only other person with Tier 1 clearance besides me, Sterling said, was Ethan Monroe. Bradley nodded. And he's gone. Emma spoke up, her voice eerily calm. They wouldn't erase everything unless that data could destroy someone at the very top. Sterling turned to Morales. Any leads from the FBI? We've issued a federal warrant for Ethan, she replied. But what's scary is he's not running. No signs of vehicle use, card swipes, calls. It's like he vanished into the system. A soft beep interrupted them. The main screen flashed red. Data integrity breach. Real-time alteration detected. Bradley jumped up. They're doing a second purge. Liv. Morales grabbed her phone, activating the internal IT comms. Isolate access points now. Kill all write permissions. But it was too late. One by one, folders dimmed on the screen. Nav-V, logs, Thomas, records, pilot report, crash 5A. All were vanishing in real time, not from an external hack, not from a device. It was an internal injector likely scripted days ago. This isn't hacking, Bradley whispered. This is pre-programmed injection. A timed command buried in the system. It's been waiting. Blake, Sterling muttered. He ordered this before his arrest. If he loses contact for too long, the system initiates its own cleanup. He didn't need the internet. The code was already inside. Emma stared at the vanishing logs like watching her father's legacy disappear, one line at a time. Her heart raced, but her hands stayed steady. She unzipped her bag, pulled out the silver USB. This is the master copy. No network, no system links, she said. My dad didn't just back it up here. He wrote a self-defense trigger in case it was ever tampered with. We still have one door left. Sterling looked at her like he was seeing a reflection of Thomas. But we can't use it here. Our system's compromised. Then we take it out, Emma said. Out of the building, out of reach. Before they know, we still have it. Morales nodded. I know a place FBI secure data vault in Houston. No internet. Absolute containment. Bradley turned to Sterling. Do we have the green light? Sterling didn't hesitate. Go now. 15 minutes later, an armored FBI SUV roared down Highway 287. Emma sat in the middle seat, flanked by two agents. In her jacket, pressed to her chest, was the USB no longer just a storage device, but the last chance to turn the tide. They hadn't driven far when Morales received an encrypted internal ping. She read the message, brow furrowing. We have a problem, she said. Legal just filed an internal memo from Sterling's own counsel. It says, suspend all flight operations involving unlicensed personnel due to psychological and system safety risks. Bradley sighed. It means Emma, Sterling concluded. They're trying to remove her, not just technically, publicly. Emma smirked. So they admit I'm a threat. Sterling tilted his head, voice low. Emma, we're not fighting a person. We're fighting the very system Thomas tried to expose and failed. She met his eyes. Then this time, we can't afford to fail. As the car crossed into Houston, a news alert lit up the SUV's dashboard screen. Breaking news. CTO. Gordon Blake arrested. Sterling Avionics declines comment. A wave of public interest was brewing, and Emma knew. It was time not just to protect the truth, but to shine a light on it. 6 p.m. The Houston City Library was packed. Outside, news crews lined the sidewalk, cameras on tripods, bright lights from local stations bathing the stone facade. Bystanders stopped, asking, what's happening in there? Another aviation scandal? Heard a kid's going to speak. Inside, the air felt heavy like the calm before a hurricane. In the front row, Sterling sat among his legal team. On the left were Captain Bradley, Gloria Carter, and Agent Morales, all silent, hands clenched. They couldn't help Emma now. The stage was hers alone. Backstage, Emma wore a dark blue jacket, her hair pulled back, eyes scanning the handwritten notes on a flashcard. No speech, just bullets. And the USB in her pocket. Nervous? Morales asked, standing beside her. Emma nodded. Yes, but I also feel light. For the first time in 5 years, I don't have to carry this alone. Morales smiled, gently touching her shoulder. They'll listen to you. Not because you're a victim, but because you're a witness they can't ignore. The moderator stepped up to the podium. Today's press briefing is to address the arrest of former Sterling Avionics CTO, Gordon Blake, and technical data provided by a new witness. Please welcome Emma Carter. Scattered applause. The lights hit her like a crash. Emma stepped up her first few steps uneven, but no one noticed. She stood center stage, facing hundreds of strangers. But for her, this was the first time the world would finally hear a girl they once called unbelievable. "Hello," she began, voice soft but clear. "I'm Emma Carter. 5 years ago, my father, Thomas Carter, died in an aviation crash labeled as a technical failure." She paused. The room went still. "I was a child then, but I remember him saying the system he was testing wasn't safe. He sent a warning. No one listened. Then he died." A reporter raised a hand. "Emma, do you have proof?" Emma pulled the USB from her pocket, held it up. Its silver surface gleamed under the lights. "This is the proof. Inside are videos, recordings, data logs showing deliberate suppression of fatal errors. One file contains my father's last words in the cockpit, and another captures a strange voice commanding, 'Execute' before he files, seconds before the crash." A wave of murmurs swept the room. "We've confirmed through the FBI that the person who altered the system and deleted the data was Gordon Blake. He didn't act alone. There's a network people who silenced, covered, and turned away." A young reporter asked, "You're just a teenager. How do we know all this is real?" Emma didn't flinch. She opened the laptop on the podium, connected it to the projector behind her. A cockpit video played. Her father's voice, calm, precise, experienced. Then the strange voice. Then system chaos. Then silence. The room froze. Emma closed the laptop. "I'm not here to cause chaos. I'm here to say what my father never got to." After her statement, Sterling stepped forward. "We are suspending the Na'vi Mark V project effective immediately," he announced. "We are cooperating with investigators to trace all related chain of command and technical decisions. Sterling Avionics will not shield wrongdoing." Morales added, "The FBI has charged Gordon Blake with data tampering, sabotage of civil aviation safety, and potential ties to a coordinated manipulation ring within the aerospace sector." After the conference, Emma sat alone on the library's fourth-floor balcony. Her hot cocoa had gone cold. Below, Houston's city lights blinked as life carried on like nothing had happened. Sterling joined her, sitting quietly for a moment. Then he said, "You did what no team of lawyers, engineers, or spokespeople could. You made them listen." Emma didn't turn, just kept staring into the distance. "I didn't do it for attention. I just wanted to give my dad's voice back." Sterling nodded gently. "And in doing that, you just saved an entire generation of future passengers." A breeze brushed across the balcony. Emma closed her eyes. She didn't feel victorious, just that something had been set right again. 1 week after the press conference that shook Houston, the skies over Amarillo were unusually calm. The sun wasn't harsh, the breeze gentle as it passed through the dry branches of late-season trees. The air felt as though it had been cleared of the tension that clung to every street and building in the days before. Emma Carter stood at the small flight training airfield south of town, the same place her father had brought her to when she was just a toddler. A white Cessna 172 sat quietly under the hangar roof, its nose aimed at the runway. The plane's red stripe ran along its fuselage, worn yet graceful, like Emma's memory of her father. "Are you sure about this?" Captain Bradley asked, leaning against the hangar frame, clipboard in hand, looking at her like a real trainee, not the girl who had taken on a corrupt system before even turning 15. Emma nodded. "I've been preparing for this for 5 years." Bradley chuckled. "No one's ever truly ready for their first flight. Some fly to remember, some to forget. What about you?" She turned to him, eyes bright in the morning light. "I fly to continue." The lesson began with pre-flight checks. Bradley explained every step as if speaking to Thomas himself. Emma walked alongside the aircraft, eyes scanning each detail: the tail, the trim tab, the wing bolts, the fuel cap. Everything felt both familiar and foreign. "Flaps?" Bradley asked. "Set. No obstruction," Emma replied. "Oil? Clear. No sediment. Fuel? 80%. checked with dipstick. He nodded, unable to hide a proud grin. Quick learner. Emma looked at him earnestly. I'm not learning. I'm remembering. Inside the cockpit, Emma gently touched the yoke. The cold metal pressed against her skin, but beneath it was something warm, as if her father's spirit still lingered inside the cabin, quietly watching. Bradley sat in the right seat, activating the intercom. Ready for startup checklist? Emma nodded. Throttle, idle. Beacon light, on. Mixture, Fullrich. Clear prop? Emma shouted out the window. Clear prop! She turned the key. The engine whirred, then roared to life, a low growl, steady, like a heartbeat. The plane trembled gently, like a waking animal. Emma tightened her grip on the yoke. There was no fear, only return. They rolled onto the taxiway. Wind brushed against the windshield, carrying the scent of fuel and warm Texas sunlight. Emma stared straight ahead, where the runway stretched like an open book, waiting to be written. Takeoff clearance granted, the radio crackled. Runway 18, runway 18, Emma echoed, pushing the throttle forward. The Cessna surged ahead, tires squealing slightly, speed increasing, then a moment of silence. She heard her father's voice, not real, but clear. Remember your trim. Fly the plane, not the fear. Emma pulled gently. The nose lifted. At 2,000 feet, Bradley removed his headset and waved. This is your moment. Take her out. Emma nodded, hands steady on the controls, eyes sweeping the panel. Speed steady. Climb smooth. No alerts. Below her, Amarillo shrank into tiny rooftops and thread-like roads. Up here, the sky opened wide. Wind was no longer resistance. It was a companion. This was where her father had lived. And where he had died. But today wasn't about the past. Emma flew not to escape memory, but to carry it forward. When they landed, the wheels touched down like a soft handshake. No bounce, no swerve. Dead center. Perfect. Bradley was waiting at the stop point. As Emma stepped down, he said just one thing. Thomas would be proud. Emma looked up at the sky, her eyes glistening. She didn't reply, just raised a hand waving toward the wide blue overhead. That evening, at home, Gloria placed an old box on the kitchen table. Inside was Thomas Carter's first pilot badge brass, edges worn. Keep it, she said. It's been yours for a long time. Emma held the badge, a warmth spreading through her chest. For the first time in years, her pain wasn't a weight. It was a foundation for something new, a journey no longer defined by fear. That night, after her first solo flight lesson, Emma came home, but she didn't go to her room like usual. She sat at the old dining table, the same spot where her father had once taught her to fold paper airplanes, read navigation charts, and trust her instincts. The USB still sat there, next to the leather notebook, an old photo, and a printed copy of a technical report Bradley had recently sent her. Each document was a fragment, and together, they pointed to something unresolved. She quietly scanned every line. An internal review note read, Test pilot Thomas Carter recommends delaying the Navi Mark V firmware update. High risk of altitude error under geomagnetic interference. Below that, a signature appeared confirming agreement with the warning. Signed, Captain James Bradley. Emma froze. She stared at the name. Her eyes darted to earlier pages. Another log, different format, listed, Post, meeting 9/3. All internal objections withdrawn. Signed by Blake, Monroe, and Bradley. She flipped to the next report. All of Thomas's technical rebuttals were marked as resolved. But no fix logs, just sign-offs. And the most repeated name? Captain James Bradley. The next morning, Emma arrived at Sterling headquarters as usual. But she didn't go to the flight sim. She went straight to the IT office to see Marcus, an old stoop technician, her father's former friend. Marcus, I need you to check something, she whispered, sliding a scanned signature across his desk. He peered at it. Bradley's? I need to know if it's real. He didn't ask why, just nodded, opened his laptop. Signature verification software ran angle, pressure, curve profile. Result, incomplete match. Marcus frowned. This was forged. Emma's eyes widened. So someone forged his signature to approve the firmware? Number worse, Marcus said. It was forged using a real sample, meaning he gave someone permission to use it. Emma left the lab, heart heavy. She didn't run, didn't call. She walked quietly to the western hangar where Bradley often worked alone. She pushed open the door. He was dusting a model airplane frame on the wall, a gift, he once said, from Thomas. Seeing her, he smiled. "You're early. More practice?" She said nothing. She pulled out the USB, laid it on the table. "I found something. Your signature. On the Navi firmware approval." Bradley looked at her, then at the USB. His face didn't change. "Something wrong?" "That signature was forged," she said coldly. "But it was made from a real one, which means you either signed or let them use it." Bradley sank into a chair. His shoulders slumped. "Emma, sometimes we think we're helping a friend, but end up digging their grave." She stood still. "Was it you? Did you help bury my father's evidence?" "No," Bradley said, voice trembling. "I once signed off on a temporary patch. I thought it was internal testing. Blake promised he'd revise it, but Thomas found the implant code. I tried to withdraw. Then Blake played a recording of a meeting. He blackmailed me." Emma took a step back. "And you stayed silent for 5 years?" Bradley looked up, his eyes red. "If I spoke out, every project I led would be shut down. Dozens of engineers would lose jobs. Sterling would lose its funding. And Thomas was already gone. No one wanted to look back." "No one but me," Emma replied. Silence, thick enough to hear dust settling. Bradley whispered, "I taught you to fly, not so you'd follow Thomas's path. I hoped, one day, you'd forgive me." Emma clenched her fist. "Forgiveness is something my father might offer, but the truth is what he died to protect." Bradley said nothing more, just reached into a drawer and placed an envelope on the table. "This is Thomas's original report. The one before it was altered. I've kept it for 5 years, out of fear. But now, maybe you'll know how to use it better than I ever did." That evening, in her room, Emma read the report line by line. Every formula, every system note, felt like a piece of her father's flesh and bone. His warnings were written in ink, with smudges like they'd been blurred by tears. At the bottom, one handwritten sentence stood out. "To the one who will listen, if I can no longer speak. Don't trust what the system shows. Trust the signs, the silence, and those who've stayed silent too long." Emma looked up. In the mirror, she didn't see a little girl. She saw the heir to a silenced truth. That morning, the skies over Texas were strikingly clear, as if nature itself were holding its breath to witness. After all the battles, would the truth be heard? Would justice still have a place in a world where every byte of data could be erased and every voice could be distorted into silence? Emma woke up early. She didn't put on her student pilot uniform like she usually did. Today, she wore a simple white shirt, her hair neatly tied back, and pinned to her chest her father's first pilot badge, worn down but shining under the morning light. In her hands, she carried 2 things that mattered more than anything else. The original, unaltered report written by Thomas Carter handed to her by Bradley. The USB containing complete system data, voice recordings, malware maps, and evidence that matched the erased employee logs within the company. She entered Sterling headquarters with Sterling, Bradley, and Agent Morales, who had spent the night verifying every bit of data through an independent FBI server. "We've confirmed everything," Morales whispered. "If you present this today, the Federal Aviation Administration will be forced to launch a federal-level investigation. But are you sure you want to be the one to stand there? They'll come at you hard." Emma nodded without hesitation. "I'm not doing this to be believed. I'm doing this so no one else is ever forced to stay silent like my dad." 9 a.m. Inside Sterling's main hall. Every technical lead, supervisor, executive, and legal advisor was present. It was a meeting with no precedent. At the front row, FAA officials, regional media, and independent consultants sat waiting. Emma stepped onto the stage. This time, not with notes, but with the voice of someone who had flown through fear and returned with the truth. "Good morning," she began, her voice not loud but resonant. "I'm Emma Carter, daughter of systems engineer and test pilot Thomas Carter. My father didn't die in a technical accident. He died because he saw something no one else wanted to admit. And today, I bring that evidence not to assign blame, but to restore what should never have been buried." She inserted the USB, connecting it to the main display. On the screen, signal deviation graphs under solar storm conditions, navigational spoofing diagrams, lines of code embedded into firmware updates labeled Emergency Patch, and the final cockpit recording of Thomas Carter. Navigation drift detected. Altitude incorrect. Execute before he files. The voice echoed through the room, and silence followed. Emma turned toward the screen. We verified that this voice wasn't part of any system, and it wasn't my father. It was a human order, the proof that this flight was never an accident. An FAA representative stood. Do you have proof linking this software to Sterling's internal leadership? Agent Morales stepped forward, her voice cut like glass. We do. This USB includes copies of firmware modifications logged under the official account of Gordon Blake, former CTO. We also have access logs tied to Ethan Monroe, a systems analyst currently in hiding. In addition, forged internal approvals were traced to signatures belonging to senior staff, some proven to be simulated from original handwriting samples. She held up a visual chart. This is the internal manipulation map identifying 6 key figures spanning Sterling Avionics and affiliated government contractors. And Blake has begun cooperating in exchange for reduced sentencing. He's talking. The room erupted. A veteran engineer stood. I worked on the Na'vi test logs for 3 years. I saw those errors and was told to delete them. I didn't think... Emma turned to him. You're not alone. Many were silenced, but now you can choose to stand with the truth. Sterling stepped forward, eyes hard. As CEO, I accept responsibility for not seeing this sooner. Effective today, every individual who contributed to this cover-up will be suspended indefinitely. And I hereby announce the permanent cancellation of the Na'vi Mark V project. Applause broke out. Not for heroes, but for the revival of conscience. That afternoon, Emma stood on the hill behind her home, looking toward the horizon. Gloria stood beside her, tears in her eyes, but smiling. They won't dare come back again, child, Emma replied softly. I don't care if they come back or not. I just want them to know this sky doesn't belong to those who control systems. It belongs to those who keep their promises. 2 months after the press conference that shook the aviation industry, the skies over Amarillo felt cleaner. Not just because spring had arrived, but because what had once been buried was now illuminated by the clarity in the eyes of a girl not yet 15. At the ceremony held at the Young Aviators Academy, Emma Carter stood quietly beneath the fluttering national flag. She didn't deliver a speech. She simply accepted her outstanding student pilot certificate in silence, fingers still gripping her father's old badge. Behind her, a new commemorative plaque had been unveiled. It didn't just carry the names of founders and flight test legends. It bore the name of someone long forgotten, Thomas Carter, for refusing to stay silent when truth needed to be spoken. That night, Emma sat alone in the cockpit of the old Cessna, the training aircraft that was now officially hers. Next to her, the leather-bound notebook once belonging to her father, now updated with a new line in her own handwriting. Truth doesn't need to scream. It only needs someone brave enough to speak it. Out there, the world still turned. Many would still choose silence out of fear. But there would always be people like Emma, those who understood. Some voices, no matter how small, can still pierce through the noise. Some girls, even when alone, can change an entire system. And some stories, even when they begin with a single scream on a sunlit runway, can still end with a flight toward justice. You've just heard the story of Emma Carter. If it touched you, please share it so others can hear it too. Because somewhere out there, amidst the static and noise, one simple click might save someone from permanent silence. Until next time. And remember, silence is a choice, but listening is an action.